Jace Rylan stepped off the shuttle with a cautious breath, his boots hitting the soft, moss-like surface of Velara Prime. The sky above shimmered in soft hues of violet and gold, like sunrise and twilight happening at once. A gentle wind moved through towering spiral trees, their translucent leaves chiming with sound, like a windbell orchestra tuned to some alien harmony. Jace squinted, expecting dust, heat, maybe the harsh clank of metal shelters. Instead, the air smelled faintly of citrus and ozone, clean and alive. He adjusted the strap on his shoulder, carrying everything he owned in one old satchel. Earth had nothing left for him. No family, no friends, no future. That's what made the offer so tempting. Free land, full citizenship, no strings attached. Just willingness to bond. He hadn't thought much about that part. It sounded like some weird bureaucratic language for cultural partnership. Maybe a shared workspace. Maybe roommates. He figured he'd sleep in a pod and harvest alien cabbage. But then two figures approached, tall, elegant, and undeniably alien. Their skin shimmered in soft jewel tones, one lavender, the other a deep silver blue. They moved like dancers, each step deliberate and silent. The lavender one had dark, flowing hair adorned with iridescent beads. The silver one had cropped curls and piercing emerald eyes that didn't blink often. Their garments weren't like anything from earth-woven fabric that clung like mist and flowed like silk. No zippers, no seams. Just natural elegance, alive with color. Jace Rylan, the lavender one said, her voice melodic but clear, each word shaped with an accent that danced across his ears. I am Nori. This is Vela. Vela gave a short nod. You will reside with us. Jace blinked. Reside? Nari tilted her head, curious. You were informed. 2 companions per settler. Bondmates. It was in the documentation. Jace remembered skimming the fine print between subway rides and hunger headaches. Integration pairing for emotional and ecological harmony. It sounded like marketing. You mean? Both of you? Yes, Vela said. You were selected for compatibility. We reviewed your profile, emotional resilience, high adaptability, technical skill. And you are unclaimed. Jace cleared his throat. Unclaimed? Without mate or pack, Nyari clarified, not unkindly. He didn't know whether to laugh or run. Instead, he followed. They led him past bioluminescent shrubs and a stone path that pulsed gently underfoot. The dwelling came into view, a large organic structure shaped like a flower mid-bloom. Its petals walls opened and adjusted as they neared, revealing a warm interior with curved architecture, soft lights, and faint instrumental music that didn't come from speakers but from the walls themselves. Inside, it felt like stepping into the belly of a gentle beast. The air was warm but not heavy, the floor firm but soft. There was a bed large enough for 3, a table set for shared meals, living vines hanging in arcs above the ceiling, filtering air and scent. Jay stared in stunned silence. Vela finally spoke. You may leave if you choose. No chains bind you. But if you stay, this becomes your home. And we your companions. Do people really do this? He asked quietly. Nari met his eyes. Only the ones who want something real. Jay set his bag down. For the first time in years, he wasn't sleeping in a shelter or crash pad or someone's leftover bunk. This was different. He was still afraid, but he didn't leave. The morning on Velara Prime broke without sound. The sky was a pale lavender wash, the twin suns still hidden behind the jagged peaks in the distance. Inside the curved living structure, Jace Rylan stirred from restless sleep. The bed was too soft, the air too clean, the silence too heavy. He wasn't used to stillness that didn't hide danger. Neri was already up, gliding through the central chamber with a basket of glowing fruit in her arms. Vela sat cross-legged near the entrance, running a thin blade along the edge of a plant, stalk that twitched like it could feel her touch. Jace sat up slowly, rubbing his face, still unsure how much of this was real. He wasn't used to being wanted. Nari noticed him, offering a small smile. "You slept poorly." "Yeah, I guess my brain hasn't caught up with all this." "You will adjust," Vela said, not unkindly. Jace stood and stretched, his muscles sore from years of compressed living and cheap mattresses. The softness of this new world made him feel exposed, like it could fall apart if he touched anything too hard. "So, what exactly do I do here?" he asked, his voice echoing slightly off the smooth, organic walls. "We'll take you to the bloom," Nyori replied. That word again? He frowned. "What is the bloom?" Neither woman answered. Instead, they motioned for him to follow. Outside, the landscape stretched with unnatural beauty, rolling hills, misty meadows, and shimmering plants that changed color depending on the angle of the suns. But the path they followed led downward, into a valley shrouded in thick fog. Jace didn't like it. His instincts prickled, and his steps grew slower. When they reached the valley floor, the fog parted to reveal a dome, almost hidden by thick roots and vines. The structure pulsed gently, breathing like a heart. Nari placed her palm on a stone near the entrance, and the wall peeled back with a moist hiss. Inside, the air was dense and charged. Rows upon rows of biotanks lined the chamber, suspended. Within them were humanoid shapes, some human, some Velari, and some different. Jace stared. "What is this?" Vela's voice was a whisper. "This is the bloom, where we tried to heal what war broke." He moved closer to a tank. Inside floated a young human woman with metallic veins running across her limbs, her eyes closed, her body still. "Hybrids?" he asked, his voice dry. "Failures," Nyori said. "Attempts. Before consent. Before partnership." Jace backed away. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you are not the first," Vela said. "But you may be the first to choose. To stay when he knows the whole truth." Nari walked to a separate panel and tapped a few sigils. A screen lit up, displaying rows of data, DNA strings, and compatibility metrics. Jace's name appeared at the top. "You were selected not just because you were lonely," she said softly. "Your blood, your cells, they resonate with ours. Stronger than expected. That's why there are two of us." The room fell into silence. Jace's stomach turned. "You mean I'm not just some colony settler? I'm part of a breeding experiment?" "No," Vela said quickly, stepping forward. "We chose you. But others don't care about choice." Nari turned the screen off and faced him. "A faction within the council wants to fast-track hybrid creation. You were supposed to be assigned to a testing facility, not a home. But we intercepted your transfer. We made you ours." Jace felt like the floor dropped beneath him. "Why?" "Me? Because you didn't come here looking for power," Vela said. "You came because you had nowhere else to go. You understand loss. That's what makes you safe. That's what makes you human." The room darkened slightly as clouds passed over the sun. Somewhere behind him, one of the tanks pulsed faster. He turned and saw movement one of the beings. Inside, opening its eyes, Jace stumbled backward. The creature's irises were silver, and its skin flickered between tones. It stared at him with recognition. "What the hell is that?" "The first," Nyari whispered. "She was born from one of the early volunteers. She never woke up until today." "And she recognizes you," Vela added, her voice tight. Alarm suddenly blared through the chamber. The dome's walls pulsed red. The outer gate hissed open without authorization. "They found us," Nyori gasped. "The faction." They know. We showed you the bloom. Vela pulled Jace toward a side tunnel. Run now. We'll explain everything later. Right now, they'll erase all of this, including us. Jace ran, not because he understood, not because he trusted, but because the truth was bigger than him now, and if he didn't protect it, no one would. The tunnel walls closed behind them with a soft shutter, sealing out the red lights and alarms like the entire world had been muted. Jace stumbled in the dark, breath ragged, his heart pounding so hard it echoed in his ears. Bioluminescent vines lit the narrow path ahead, casting Neri and Vela in flickering green and blue hues, their elegant features tense and focused. They weren't running aimlessly. They knew exactly where to go. Jace followed, confusion and betrayal roaring in his skull. A day ago, he thought he was starting a life here, a chance to belong, 2 beautiful women, a peaceful home. Now he was running from the authorities of a planet he barely understood, with 2 aliens who had apparently hijacked his assignment, and who may or may not be part of a rebellion. "Where are we going?" he shouted between gasps. "Safe hold," Vela snapped. "A place off-grid, for those who've seen too much or survived too much. You're not the only one they lied to," Nari added without looking back. "There are others like us. Pairs, triads, even full clusters who broke the binding protocols." "What protocols?" Jace said, nearly tripping on a root. "What does that even mean?" They didn't answer. Tunnel widened into a dim chamber with branching paths, each marked with strange glowing symbols etched into the stone. Vela pressed her palm to one of them. A low vibration passed through the floor. The wall split open, revealing a platform that descended like a slow elevator. Jace didn't move. "You need to tell me what's happening. No more riddles." Nyari turned to him at last. Her face, even in half-light, carried grief. "The Council has been running the Bloom Project for over 20 years. Hundreds of humans have been brought here under the same offer you accepted. Free land, new life, companionship, but the pairings weren't random. Every one of you was selected based on genetic markers traits they hoped would produce viable hybrids. Jace swallowed, and the others? Many died. Some never made it past the first bonding cycle. The Council called them losses, data points." Vela stepped closer, lowering her voice. "We didn't want that fate, for you or ourselves. So we forged a match without clearance, took your profile, claimed your transfer file. They don't know we've already bonded." "Wait," Jace said, eyes narrowing. "You forged my file? You kidnapped me?" "No," Nyari said. "We gave you a choice. And you stayed. But I didn't know the truth, and we hoped that would come in time." The silence between them stretched as the platform descended into darkness. Somewhere above, the alarms had stopped. They weren't searching anymore. They were hunting. "Why?" "Now?" Jace asked. "Why did they find us today?" Vela's voice was flat. "Because the girl in the tank opened her eyes." Jace thought back to the moment in the Bloom Chamber, the hybrid child's silver gaze locking onto his like a mirror into some buried truth. She wasn't supposed to survive. Nyari whispered. She was one of the first. The project was shut down after she failed to wake, but she did. And she recognized you. Jace felt cold. "You think she's mine?" "No," Vela said. "We think she's connected to your DNA line. The pattern matches your family signature." "Which means?" "Which?" "Means someone in my bloodline has already been here," he finished. The platform stopped with a hiss. The door opened into a cavern lined with natural crystal formations. Inside were people, human men, and Vilari women clustered together, startled by the newcomers. One woman stood from a medical station, her arms streaked with dried red fluid. She stared at Jace, then her eyes went wide. "Is that him?" She whispered. Nyar. I stepped forward. It's him. The woman ran to a side chamber and returned with a thin data scroll. She handed it to Jace. On the screen was a grainy image and Earth ID card. Name, Caleb Rylan. Status, missing, presumed dead. Last known location, Velara Prime Processing Site. 14. That's my brother, Jace whispered, his voice cracking. Room fell into stunned silence. He hadn't seen Caleb in over 10 years. The last message was from a mining job on Titan. After that, nothing. No trace. No word. Jace thought he'd just disappeared into the system like so many others. He was here, Nyari said. And the girl, she's his daughter. Jace dropped to his knees, the weight of it all collapsing over him like stone. His brother had been pulled into the same lie, used, broken, and now his niece, barely born, barely surviving, was alive, and the reason they were being hunted. They'll erase her, the medic woman said. They already tried once. They'll do it again. And if they find you connected, you won't survive long either. A distant rumble echoed from above. Dust fell from the ceiling. Vela turned toward the others. We need to move the girl. And prepare the network. What network? Jace asked. The one built to stop this, Nyari said. Because now it's not just about bonds or love or new homes. It's about the truth. And who controls it? Jace looked up at them. Eyes dark with understanding. Then he stood. If we're going to fight, he said, we do it together. The safe hold didn't feel safe anymore. 12 hours after Jace learned the truth about his brother and the hybrid girl who carried their bloodline, the underground cavern had become a staging ground. Conversations were no longer whispered. They were planned, strategic, sharp with purpose. The once quiet rebellion had ignited into something real, and Jace stood in the center of it. He sat in a circular chamber carved from the living crystal of the mountain. The walls glowed faintly with stored energy, casting fractured rainbows across the faces of the humans and Velari who surrounded him. They were scared, but not broken. Some bore wounds. Others clung to children who didn't fit easily into either species. And still, they listened. Vela stepped beside him, armored in dark organic plates that flexed with her movements. She no longer wore the flowing robes of a bondmate. She looked like a warrior. The council has activated the culling protocol, she said to the room. Any hybrid offspring not registered with the central database is to be detained or eliminated. The word hung in the air like poison. They're claiming it's to prevent genetic contamination, Nyari added. But it's not about biology. It's about control. They didn't expect the hybrids to live. Now that some of them are thriving, they're terrified of what they represent. Jace looked down at the data scroll in his hands. His niece unnamed, undocumented, but alive. Kept in stasis because the council feared what she could become. A bridge. A question they couldn't answer. Proof that humans and Velari didn't just mix, they changed. She woke up when she saw me, Jace said softly. What if she's more than just a symbol? What if she's connected to something bigger? Then she's in more danger than we thought, Nyari replied. That night, they moved her. The chamber holding the hybrid girl was flooded with bioluminescent mist and shielded by an energy field that flickered nervously as Jace approached. The girl's tank was opening slowly, steam curling off the glass edges. Her body was small, delicate, but strong. Silver veins glowed faintly beneath skin that pulsed between pale lavender and soft human tan. Her eyes fluttered open. Silver. Alive. Awake. She's stable, the medic whispered, fully aware. Responding to movement, sound, even intent. Jace approached the tank slowly. He didn't know what he expected, a cry, a plea, a panic. Instead, the girl raised one tiny hand and pressed it gently against the glass, Jace pressed his hand back. Something passed between them. Not words, not images, just presence, recognition, a knowing that cracked his chest open like lightning. I think she's communicating, he whispered, without speaking. Niori stepped forward, breath caught in her throat. Some Velori develop empathic abilities during bonding cycles. But this is different. The lights flickered. The floor beneath them vibrated. An alarm blared. Too late, Vela hissed. They found us again. Evac now, shouted a voice from the other chamber. Jace turned, panic seizing his chest. We can't move her this fast. She? Die if we leave her. The medic yelled. Then we don't leave, Jace said. We hold. And that was when everything changed. The ceiling exploded inward. A blast of blinding white light tore through the upper ridge. Debris fell like rain. Screams echoed as figures in black armored suits dropped through the breach. Rifles glowing with charged plasma, Velari Council enforcers. One of them landed in front of Jace. Weapon raised, he didn't hesitate. Jace tackled him hard, knocking the weapon aside just as the hybrid girl's tank shattered from the force of the impact. Glass, fluid, and biofoam sprayed across the floor as the girl tumbled into Nairi's arms. Gasping, breathing, alive. She's awake, Nairi cried. She's breathing on her own. Another blast rocked the chamber. Vela spun and returned. Fire, her arm weapon releasing a burst of sound and kinetic energy that knocked 3 enforcers into the far wall. We can't hold this position. She shouted. More enforcers dropped down. And then the hybrid girl screamed. It wasn't a child's. Screamed. It was a pulse. A wave. A shock of force that tore through the chamber like a psychic tidal wave. The enforcers froze. Their helmets shattered from the inside. Their weapons exploded in their hands. They dropped twitching, unconscious, some groaning in pain. Everyone else staggered, stunned but untouched. Jace turned to the girl. She stood on her own now, eyes glowing, skin shimmering like liquid crystal. Her gaze locked with his again. You are mine, the feeling said. And I am yours, not words, not thoughts, but something more ancient, something undeniable. The safehold was silent. Even the alarm stopped. What just happened? Someone whispered. She defended herself, Niari breathed. She defended us. Jace stepped toward the girl and lifted her into his arms. She didn't resist. She simply rested her head on his chest like she'd done it 1,000 times. Vela stared in awe. She's not just a hybrid. She's evolution. From the upper ridge, someone screamed, Fall back, it's too late. She's awakened. And they ran. The enforcers, the soldiers, the ones who had power for decades, fled. Jace looked around at the stunned survivors, at Nairi's trembling hands, at Vela's blood-smeared armor. I think we just won something, he said. Nyar. I stepped closer, voice trembling. No, we just started something. The air outside the safehold tasted like lightning. By the time the smoke cleared, the ancient rebel tunnels beneath the Veleron cliffs were half collapsed. The blast from the child's psychic scream had disarmed an entire strike squad, but it had also drawn the eyes of the entire council. Jace stood at the mouth of the canyon, the hybrid girl in his arms, her tiny breath warm against his neck. She was asleep now, but even unconscious, she radiated something different. The energy in the air bent around her. Gravity softened. His heartbeat slowed when she touched him, but the world itself seemed to lean in. Behind him, Nari and Vila emerged with the last group of survivors. Blood stained Nairi's dress. Vela's armor was cracked down the chest plate, and one of her eyes was swelling shut, but her hands never trembled. Not once. Status? Jace asked, still cradling the girl. 4 injured. No dead. The blast Took out their comms and tracking tech, Vela said, scanning the sky. But they'll regroup. And next time, they won't underestimate her. Or us, Nyari added quietly. They moved quickly through a canyon path few knew even existed, carved long ago by Velari exiles during the first schism. Now it was being used again. History repeating itself, this time with hybrids leading. The story. They arrived at a hidden enclave by midnight. The camp wasn't much natural geothermal heat beneath rocky terrain. Water purified by subterranean biofilters, shielded from drones by a layer of crystalline sediment that blocked synthetic frequencies. There were no walls. Only watchers. And watchers there were. Word of the child's awakening had already spread faster than anyone expected. Refugees had gathered. Mixed species couples once scattered and hiding now walked openly through the Tiuna camp. Some held hands. Others carried children. Some had scars that told of escape and survival. All had eyes full of fire. The crowd parted as Jace entered. They didn't know his name, but they knew who he carried. Someone whispered, "She's the catalyst." Another voice added, "The council has no power over her." Jace wasn't used to being watched. Not like this. Not with hope. A small Velari elder stepped forward. Her skin was a darker shade of amethyst, her hair streaked with silver. She bowed slightly, her eyes never leaving the sleeping child. "She carries the ancient current," the elder said. "Before we split ourselves into caste and council. Before purity meant chains." Jace looked down at the girl who stirred faintly in his arms. "She's just a kid," he said. "No," the elder replied. "She's an answer." Niori stepped beside him. "She needs protection and time. The council will return with everything they have, and they will burn everything in their way," Vela said, "including this place." Then Jace spoke. Loudly, clearly. "Then we hit first." The crowd went still. "Strike the council?" someone asked. "With what?" Jace turned to Vela. "You said there's an old armory. A forgotten vault sealed beneath the bloom?" She nodded once. "My mother's map spoke of it. Velari tech fused with human tools. Designed during the integration wars before the Accords were buried." Jace turned to the elder. "Do you know how to get us in?" She stared at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. The vault lay beneath a dormant crater known as the Hollow IAA, scar from a war no one remembered, marked forbidden by every map in circulation. It was said to be cursed, haunted. But what lay below wasn't a ghost. It was a weapon. The team was small Jace, Nari, Vela, the hybrid child, and 2 rebel scouts. The girl insisted on coming. Not in words, but in presence. When they tried to leave her behind, she simply appeared in front of the ship's hatch, staring until they relented. She was only a child in body. The hollow eye opened with the pulse of her hand. Stone lifted. Energy bloomed. A long-dead defense. Grid hummed to life, then bowed to her will. Inside. They found what was never meant to be found. Vessels grown from organic bone. Suits that bonded with the user's skin. Pulse rifles that read thoughts. Bio-armored hulls fused with memory. Vela's eyes widened. This is Velari tech, but modified for human cognition. It was built by both, Niari said, running her fingers along a panel. Designed in secret, before the council wiped the collaboration records. And at the core of the vault, they found her voice. An AI, but not like Earth's. She was consciousness etched into song. A being of ancient Velari legend, coded into frequency and memory locked away for fear she would inspire rebellion. She spoke when the girl touched the core. Daughter of divergence. The voice sang, "You bring the spark and the fracture." Then, the lights came alive. Images played. The truth. How the council staged the hybrid collapse, how successful pairings were hidden, children stolen. Failures orchestrated. How they used the bloom not to save Vilari genetics, but to filter and eliminate traits they feared. How the war had never ended, it had just changed uniforms. Nyar, I gasped. My own research. They lied about the fertility decline. It wasn't natural. No, the voice said. It was engineered. And only the children you create now can repair it. Jace looked to the girl, then to Vaila, then to Nari, and something in him hardened. They weren't fighting for peace anymore. They were fighting for the right to exist. When they left the vault, the sky had changed. Ships hovered in low orbit. Beacons. Scan the surface. The council was coming. Then let them come, Jace said, loading one of the thought-sensed rifles onto his back. Nyari activated a stealth cloak. Vela slid a bioblade into her armor. And the girl. She simply stood, eyes glowing, the wind bending around her. We start with the broadcast, Jace said. The whole truth. On every frequency. We have the voice, Nyari nodded. We have the data, and the world is listening. Then, we give them something to hear, Vela said. Behind them. The vault sealed itself shut, singing one final note into the stars. The night before the broadcast, Velara Prime held its breath. From the cliffs of the northern Scarlands to the lush crystalline valleys of the equator, the entire planet shimmered with tension. Council satellites drifted in low orbit, scanning for unauthorized transmissions, unaware that the very air around them had already been rewritten. In a carved command cave beneath the rubble enclave, Jace stood before the console, fingers hovering above the activation node. The hybrid girl sat beside him, legs crossed, her silver eyes closed. Around her, instruments hummed faintly even though they were offline. She didn't need power. She was power. You're sure the signal can't be traced back to us? Jace asked. Nyar, I stepped up behind him. It's not just one signal. The voice is going to fracture it across every known frequency, bounce it through satellite shells, repurpose dead transmitters buried under decades of rock and soil. They'll know someone's talking, but they won't know from where. Reach every council channel, every colony node, even Earth's fringe stations, Vela added. They can try to shut it down, but by then, the truth will already be viral. Jace exhaled slowly. All right then, he said. Let's tear the mask off. He touched the node. A soft chime echoed. Then silence. Then the voice began to sing. Not in words at first, but feeling. Emotion poured into the air like honeyed wind, coating the world with memories. Images flickered on terminals across the galaxy. Grainy footage of hybrid children in stasis, council officials signing false sterilization protocols, maps of hidden labs. Recordings of council meetings were Vilari. Leaders demanded the hybrid experiments be rebranded as cultural exchanges to reduce human panic. Jace's own image appeared, holding the child, surrounded by rubble and fire, a protector, not a threat. The voice translated everything in every language, human and Velari. You have been misled. Unity was never the danger. Fear was. Back on Earth, diplomats stared at their screens in stunned silence. On Velara Prime, hundreds of council-aligned settlements fell into chaos. Some blocked the signal. Others tried to spin it, but most simply watched and believed. The truth had been spoken, and no one could unhear it. The first strike hit. 3 hours later, the council sent in Black Sun enforcers, an elite strike unit bred for loyalty and speed. They descended in sleek, atmospheric skimmers, like knives cutting through the clouds. But the rebels were waiting. Vela led the charge at Outpost Meridian. With her new armor cinched to the girl's neural imprint, her reaction time was twice what any enforcer could match. She moved like light, her bioblades carving through enemy shields. never once striking to kill, only to disable. We're not here to slaughter them, she reminded the others. We show them what justice looks like, not vengeance. At Outpost Silerin, Nyari deployed a cognitive disruptor array built from parts she salvaged from the Bloom Vault itself. It created a soundless field that unraveled the targeting systems of the Council's drones. They spiraled out of the sky like dead birds, their lights flickering in surrender. Meanwhile, Jace and the girl moved from site to site in the stealth. Runner, a ship no larger than a shuttle but fused with ancient tech that bent the air around it. Everywhere they landed, something awakened. They found hybrid children hiding with guardians in caves, on farms, even inside council cities. Some were no older than 2. Others were already teenagers, silent, bright-eyed, raised in secrecy, and all of them felt it. Pull. The awakening. They didn't need instructions. They moved as one. Jay stared at them in awe. They're sinking. Like a neural field. They're not an army, Nyari whispered. They're an echo of what we were meant to become. Then came the warning. A Valori elder raced into the command chamber, her voice tight. They've activated the core fire protocol. Vela froze. That's a planetary-level strike order. They plan to burn everything, Nyari said, voice low. Cities, colonies, settlements that sheltered hybrids. They'll cleanse the planet before letting it change. Jace's jaw clenched. What's the timeline? 8 hours. The planetary core will destabilize. Artificial seismic charges, seeded across tectonic fault lines meant for extinction events. Then we stop it. But how? Nari said, dread creeping into her voice. The voice answered from the shadows. With her. The girl stepped forward. She wasn't a child anymore. Her presence filled the room, like a nova held in flesh. I can connect to the seed grid, she said without speaking. But I need all of them. Every hybrid. Every voice. Together. Jace nodded. Then we gather them. And so they did. Across Velara Prime, rebel runners scattered. Messages went out through light and memory. Within hours, over 200 hybrid children stood across the core fire relay stations, each one wired into the planet's stabilization lattice. When the Council sent its final wave of destroyers, the sky itself rejected them. Clouds split. Winds bent and the hybrids sang, not with voices, but with memory, with inherited pain, with ancient empathy, with the harmonic code of 2 species meant to evolve, not dominate each other. The destabilizers failed. The Council ships vanished, and the girl, Jace's niece, stood at the planet's highest peak. Her eyes turned skyward. When the energy subsided, Jace reached her first. You did it, he said, tears threatening. You saved them. She looked at him with quiet joy. No, we saved us. Behind them, Velara Prime began to bloom. For real. This time, not in test tubes or falsified reports, but with truth, with unity, with the song of 2 worlds. No longer afraid to sing in harmony. The suns rose together for the first time in Velaran memory, not by chance, not by orbital shift, but by design. Across the once divided continent of Velara Prime, the world itself seemed to breathe anew. The twin stars cast golden and violet light. Across emerald hills, crystalline valleys, and cities once scarred by war and silence. But this morning, those scars shimmered. Not with pain, but with proof. Proof of survival. Proof of unity. And at the heart of it all stood the child once considered a failure. She walked barefoot, across the old Council Assembly's shattered platform, flanked by Nyari and Vela, with Jace Rylan walking just behind, the wind playing through his jacket like a second heartbeat. She moved without fear, without hesitation. Her presence held the weight of something larger than blood, larger than DNA, larger even than destiny. Every hybrid child followed her steps. Hundreds of them. And behind them came the new Valari, the humans who stayed, and the allies who once hid underground. Jace could barely process it. It had been 3 days since the planetary strike was stopped. 2 days since the Council surrendered. And 1 day since the planet's very core shifted. Realigned by the collective resonance of hybrid minds healing old fractures in the crust that predated even Valari civilization. Valara Prime had been broken for a long time, but it wasn't anymore. Now, it was whole, and the galaxy was watching. Every major broadcast relay, human and Valari alike, the event was being streamed. The first Council of Unity, the place where both species would stand as equals and decide what came next. Nyari stood at the central podium, her voice calm, but electric with resolve. We do not stand here as victims, nor as rebels. We stand here as witnesses to what was done to us and what we chose to become in spite of it. A hush fell over the crowd as she continued. We were told that our bonds were shameful, that mixing species would create abominations. But the only abomination was fear, the kind that would erase a child before it took its first breath. She turned and looked at the hybrid girl, now fully awake and radiant under the twin suns. She is not the end of us. She is the beginning. Applause erupted, not just in the square, but across screens on every world. Next came Vaela. She said nothing at first. Instead, she activated a display one showing files recovered from the Bloom Vault. It detailed not just the atrocities of the hybrid program, but the secret alliances that once tried to stop it. Scientists, mothers, defectors who hid knowledge instead of destroying it. We are not here to seek revenge, Vaela said. We are here to claim what was denied to all of us. Then came Jace. He didn't step onto the podium. He simply walked to the girl and lifted her onto his shoulders. She raised her hands, and the crowd went silent again. Then she spoke not through voice or thought, but something that bypassed both. A psychic resonance spread out from her like the waves of a deep ocean current. And in every heart, a message formed. You were never separate. The words didn't come from her mouth. They came from memory, from instinct, from the shared threads of what both species had always feared to admit. They had been one long before they bloomed. It was just forgotten. Months passed. The council was dissolved. In its place rose the Concord of divergence, where representation from hybrids, humans, and Valari stood equally. The Bloom Vault was repurposed, no longer a lab, but a learning sanctuary. New technology emerged. Empathy-linked navigation, bioharmonic architecture, shared. Dreaming for therapeutic healing. The hybrid children were not confined. They were celebrated. And Jace? He stayed. He never thought he would. Not when he first arrived, just a broken man offered a free home and 2 alien brides. Now, that home was alive. His hands were no longer calloused from repair. They were worn from planting the first multicultural crop grown from Valari roots and earth soil. A hybrid harvest. He had a new title too, though he hated using it. Father of the Concord. Not because he led it, but because it had started with him. And one night, under the twin moons, as he watched the girl his niece run laughing across the field, he felt Nyari's arms slip around his waist. She chose a name, she whispered. Jse turned, eyes curious. What is it, Leora? He smiled. Light. She said it came to her in a dream. Vaela stepped up beside them, holding a scroll filled with new education protocols. She also said she wants to travel. Not now. But soon? To Earth? Jace asked. To everywhere. Vaela replied. He looked up at the stars. They didn't seem as far away as they used to. Later that night, Leora sat between him, Nyari, and Vaela on the smooth glassy stone outside their dome. She pressed her small hands to his and smiled. When I'm older, she said softly, I want to show other worlds what we are." "What are we exactly?" Jace asked, his voice low. She tilted her head. "Proof that love isn't limited by blood. That peace isn't weakness. That evolution isn't war." He kissed the top of her head, a lump rising in his throat. "You'll be brilliant." She nodded. "I already am." And in that moment, under a sky reborn by unity and sacrifice, Jace finally understood. He hadn't just found a new home. He had helped build a new future for all of them.